In this module, you'll learn how to configure auditing for Azure SQL Database and SQL Managed Instance. Hi, I am CEO Rodriguez. After completing this module, you should be able to 1. Describe Azure SQL auditing capabilities. 2. Configure audit action groups. 3. Configure audit log destinations. And 4. Design a compliant audit strategy. Let's get started. Here we are at the Microsoft Azure portal, portal.azure.com. We are going to work again with auditing databases. In the previous module, we talked about the platform protection, the platform itself, the server. But now we are going to concentrate on the databases, not the platform. So again, you could click on SQL here, but I already have it here. And we are going to look into we'll take a look at this later on, but let's take a look at some of the databases that are on this server. Now, some of the stuff that you configure the server affect the databases as well, but we're going to look at specifically at stuff at the database level. And so let's click into one of these databases. Let's set the stage over here. Uh, Going with our fictitious company, Contoso Financial Services secure their Azure SQL environment with Microsoft Entra authentication, private endpoints, and customer managed encryption keys. We saw all that on the previous video. But during a recent compliance audit, and this happens all the time, this audits, I find things that you didn't anticipate. The financial regulator identified a critical gap. The organization can't prove who accessed the banking database, when they connected, or what queries they executed. So there's no audit trail for any database activity. So that's the issue here. The problem affects both the Azure SQL Database server that processes daily transactions and the SQL Managed Instance that runs credit risk assessments. An AI fraud detection service makes hundreds of queries per minute using a managed identity. However, none of those operations are recorded anywhere the compliance team can review. Contoso needs auditing enabled to meet regulatory requirements for financial data access tracking. And this is, we live in a different era, this agentic era. Before AI, we have to be concerned about humans doing things and maybe applications. But now we have another beast, agents. There are thousands of autonomous agents in different companies doing all kinds of stuff. And these agents, they do not sleep, they do not rest. They are constantly accessing your environment. So having visibility and controls in place is paramount. It's more than ever. Okay. And obviously, the criminals can set up these agents out there, and they just go and relax and let the agents work for them. So I think that if cybersecurity personnel, analysts, anyone in charge of defending a network, if it was stressful, um, multiply that times tens now, because it's really difficult to protect against these agents unless you have a robust environment. So that's what the whole idea of this certification, that it will help you protect against these agents as well. Anyway, so the um, the the first task that we are here is to describe the Azure SQL auditing capabilities and select appropriate audit action groups. So if we are into, so again, so here you see the essentials of this database. Okay, we've been here before, but we are interested in the, so if we scroll down on this side over here, we are going into security. So normally when you come for the first time, these things are going to be like that, and you need to expand them. So if we go to security, what we are interested in is auditing. I want to see what's on and what's not. Now, I see a problem here right away. Server level auditing is disabled. What that means is that all the databases, then you need to configure this manual. Now, in many cases, the recommender approach, in almost most cases, is to actually enable auditing at the server level. Uh, not because if you have many databases in a server, then you have to go one at a time and do that. But if you enable at the server level, then then you can do that. But there are many reasons. You may have a server that have a lot of databases, and you're just concerned about one. Obviously, the more auditing that you do, the more storage you will need, and this incurred in expenses. So every company is different, and there are business cases for enabling at the server, and there are business cases for just enabling a specific databases. It is important to understand that you definitely you're going to get questions about this, and the scenario may be that, hey, all databases, as soon as you hear that all databases must be audited, then basically in your mind should go, okay, server level, and then you're going to have several scenarios in which you need to choose. But anyway, so we're looking at this, and this is just a toggle. So if you need to turn this on, you just click on this, but then you need to choose, where do you want those audit logs to go, the destinations, and you need to choose at least one. And there are three choices here. Either a storage account. So if you click storage, then you need to choose um, a storage account. Okay. If you don't have one, you need to create one. Now, why would you choose a storage account? And again, this is another question here. Um, if you need to, let's say, save those logs for whatever reason, maybe you can choose storage account and some kind of cheap storage account and that kind of stuff. But in most cases, you want these logs because you want to do you want to query them, you want to see what's going on. And in that case, the storage account is not the best place. So most of the time, unless you need to, again, just save some, you can choose more than one. Maybe you want to store the logs for compliance reasons. You want to store for 10, 7 years, and you're going to be questioned about stuff like that. So you may choose the storage for that, but to query things in real time and to see what's going on and defend against attacks and stuff like that, you want this log analytics. if you use Microsoft Sentinel, for example, right, or uh, Azure Monitor. Um, and if you use, let's say, Splunk or Curator or any other SIEM, you can send that to an event hub. So that's what the event hub is about. And then you need to have this in place. But those are the basically the things that you need to know in terms of this for the exam is the make sure that it's enabled. So again, Azure SQL Auditing tracks databases events and writes them to an audit log in your Azure storage account, Log Analytics Workspace, or Event Hub. If you need to learn more about this, you can, click on this learning references right here. And, there is a lot of information that, if you are in charge of SQL in your company, obviously that's something that you would have to go. So normally there is um, a DBA administrator in a company that would understand. This is one of those things in which, as a cybersecurity administrator, you are, you know, you're responsible for the auditing of the company. If it's a public company, it's going to be audited every year in the United States, and normally audits will come to the security engineer, the the ones in charge of security, and you need to understand these things from that perspective, right? Um, so maybe again, so log analytics to be able to query and use KQL within Microsoft. A storage account if you want to store for compliance reasons for a long time, and then Event Hub to stream this to a uh, third-party SIEM like Splunk or Curator. Now, so those are the things you need to know. Definitely need to know for the exam. Looking at let's take a look at the module from Microsoft Learn. This is what we are following. And so we already did the configure platform level. So we are in the, um, yeah, so let's take a look at this over here. And so basically, the first objective is to describe Azure SQL auditing capability. That's what we are talking about. Okay. And so here is the configuration flow. So, first you can configure, the Azure SQL logical server, the transaction DB, that kind of stuff. And then that would do all the databases. So, and then those events, you can create audit action groups. The primary would be probably compliance, and then additional groups. And so here you can use again this each audit log record includes these pieces. Again, really nice graphic to understand how this work. And here is the retention and destination, because the main thing about it's the retention, like how long do you want to retain this, right? And if it's like from 30 to 90 days, then normally that's in the log analytics because you need to query that. But then um, this, you can, for compliance purposes, store this, for a very long time. But anyway, so, uh, you know, it's, so come over here and take a look at this. There's a lot of information regarding this um, the stuff. One decision, again, we talked about this, that you need to make is decide between server level or database level scope. And yeah, the configure retention settings for compliance scope. So yeah, all that stuff. The next uh, objectives, configure audit destination. Well, we talked about that. We talked about the destination. Um, remember the Azure blob storage, right? For compliance, archive, long-term retention. That's uh, the main thing. Authentication, it's either managed identity or a SaaS token, and you want to use managed identity whenever possible. If there is a question regarding this, Azure Monitor, log analytics, and then so for Azure Monitor analytics, and this is a structured log record. So they are best for operational queries, dashboards, and alerts, and that's why you almost want to do this in combination with others, but you always want to do the log analytics. And they are automatic via diagnostic settings. So you need to do that in the diagnostic setting. We can take a look at that. And then event hubs, stream events, real-time security information, and event management or SIEM forwarding again to other. And normally this would use a connection string because you need to connect to. You cannot use Entra here because you need to connect to whatever the solution it is that you are um, streaming that to. All right. Important to understand that. So again, you could do the same thing at the Azure SQL, server, saying everything to. But we're talking about the databases, the blob storage, log analytics, event hub, and um, this is a very nice picture to understand that. All right, and there's a lot more information, stuff how to do it, using the how to configure this using the Kustu query language, KQL, and all that stuff. So we've been through that already as well. Configuring for SQL Managed Instance. We don't have a managed instance per se, but so if we go into our um, server here, actually this one, so we don't have any. Actually, before we even get there, no, I don't have the SQL Server anymore. Anyway, so we don't have any managed instance per se, but let's go into. I don't think I could create one of the only the free one, and the free one doesn't have you know many things regarding that you could actually configure. That's why I don't really like this. But let's see if we could find a place where a lot of these are not available in the US. Huh, okay. Seems like this is. Uh, let me choose this resource group and manage instance, free SQL, blah, blah, blah. Let's see what we could do with this. I don't believe that we can do much, but um, at least just to look at this different components. So that's creating there. All right. Uh, and actually, while that thing uh, processes here, oh, okay, the that's still going on over there, but No, I don't have anything of this one. So let's go back into, and we'll wait a little bit until this thing finish. Some error there, um, which we're not going to even try to troubleshoot or anything like that. So uh, let's see. So this is the one that we just created. I don't believe that there's much. Yeah, there's not even a security settings that you could do. Just kind of network stuff. But yeah, that's useless there because it's not much to. I just wanted um, to go through the manage instance stuff to see that. But anyway, so nothing to the whole thing is similar anyways, whether it is the managed instance or one of those. Now in the managed instance, obviously you get stuff that is configured by Microsoft. So we have already been here into the identity component. Um, So we talked about this in the encryption as well. Basically, the auditing component was the thing that we wanted to see over here. Oh, and I wanted to go back into um, the server itself. So if we look at because we're talking about uh, the 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 configuration of the SQL server, and what I wanted to do, so these are the logical server, and we have a couple over here, and I want to take a look at the auditing of the server in the same place in auditing. Okay, and so this is why when we looked at the database, it was disabled. And what I was saying is that you could enable this at the server level. And the same thing, you need to choose a destination, um, and whether you choose the logical server or the database, it's basically the same thing. So normally that uh, is the prefer in some of the questions, because you don't have to individually go into all the databases. So important to do that, and that's it. So with that, we conclude this video on the um, auditing for databases. So basically, in this module, you learn to configure comprehensive auditing for Azure SQL Database and SQL Managed Instances, which is, again, the same thing. The managed instance is that it's just a database that you create um, on Microsoft, and you don't have to do anything about it. So the managed instance basically means that um, it's managed by Microsoft, and therefore there's nothing much for you to do. It's just that I cannot do it on this server, but you would come to the managed instance right here. We don't have anything there because they are expensive. But basically, uh, the managed instance it has a lot more stuff, and this is what I was talking about. So when you go through this in the managed instance, actually, even though we don't we cannot go through and finish it, but at least you see some of the stuff over here. But um, in security, protect your data using Microsoft Defender for SQL. There's actually going to be a video with that. Oh, you could start a free trial if you wanted to. Here you would configure the identity. The default is the system assigned managed identity, and service principal if you wanted to. Um, yeah, so you configure some stuff at the when you at the creation time, look at the compute depending on whatever you choose. I mean, this database is because remember you don't have to worry about the server. You don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. The underlying infrastructure is configured by Microsoft. So this is the cloud managed or share responsibility model in which you're only concerned about your data and some of the security the configuration stuff. But Microsoft updates the database, the server, the SQL server, the Windows server, everything. You don't have to worry about any of that. In additional settings, yeah, some stuff related to database and that kind of stuff, which is unrelated to security per se. So we're not uh, worrying about that. All right. So again, we uh, saw the auditing for the Azure SQL database and the managed instance. Same thing. Um, Here you learn how to implement audit action. Well, we didn't go over the action groups to capture authentication events. That would be more into the database per se. We're not going to go into that, but here you also learn to configure multiple auditing destination. Remember we talked about the blob storage with you can configure then immutable or warm policies when you configure that. So once you finish configuring that, you can create these policies so that the warm, I don't know if you remember the old CDs, those who are old enough, the write ones, read many. So basically meaning they're immutable. You cannot delete them. And this is an important concept because if a cyber criminal get a hold of your database, the first thing that they do, they try to delete the backup so that you cannot restore, especially those ransomware attacks. That's one of the things that they do. So when you back up your database, you want to make sure that it is protected in a way that it cannot be deleted. And that's what the immutable policies are all about. And then so you save this for a long time in archives for compliance purposes. Definitely you're going to get at least one or two questions about that. You also learn to configure log analytics for operational monitoring. And that's the key here. Now, when you send those logs to um, log analytics, they're expensive, right? Depending on the amount of logs. So important to understand that. For SQL Managed Instance, um, you would create server audits using the TSQL and the diagnostic settings. So, once you have that, including support operations and auditing to track platform level administrator actions, right? Um, Once you do that, then now you have what is called a tamper-resistant audit trail that demonstrate who accessed the banking data, when and what queries they executed. So one audit is in place, you can track all that stuff, including every query from the Contosos AI fraud detection service. Remember that this AI fraud detection service is the real problem, and we want to be able to audit those actions from this AI that never sleeps. That's the whole scenario of this conversation. So this foundation meets regulatory requirements for financial services and provides forensic evidence for security investigations. And that's the whole point here, right? So going back into our, this is um, the course or the learning path where we are. So for those of you who have not been following, we are in the learning path, implement security for Azure SQL Database. And the first module was the configure platform level security, and then auditing. And the last module on this learning path is going to be the implement Microsoft Defender for databases. We're going to go into the Defender component. And so to look at this is the entire Microsoft Learn. Again, for those who have not been following, remember that there are learning path or courses, and then these courses are broken into modules, and there are 12 courses. So this is a big certification. We are here. So we are still not even half of this. A long way to go. Um, and then here are the other uh, learning path on this module. So I hope that you continue with me in this exciting journey to the SC-500 certification exam. Hope to see you next.